Yo, what's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? It's me, Tim Keys, and I'm back. I wanted to do a follow-up video comparing the different granular VSTs. I got four loaded up, including Pad Shop 2, Reasons Grain, Pigments from Arturia, and Native Instruments Form. I know there are plenty of other granular synths out there, but I wanted to specifically focus on these four devices because why not? So, without further ado, let's get started. So I got Pad Shop Pro 2 pulled up. This is released from Steinberg back in late 2019. And, Pad Shop Pro is or has been considered a staple among a lot of folks who use granular synthesis, and for good reason. Like, this is a very capable, plugin. And I mean, the cool thing about it is you have two sound engines, or at least two oscillators that you can use to load up, your samples. One thing about granular synthesis in general is that it takes your sample, cuts it up into tiny different delays and crossfades those different delays at various intervals, which you can kind of make adjustments to speed and the duration and all that good jazz. And as a result, you're going to be able to create these sonic textures that sound really, really, really nice, and lend towards sounds that are not easily achievable otherwise. So I think in that respect, granular synthesis is really, really cool. And with Pad Shop Pro, it being what it is a very capable device. So getting into it, you have here your waveform that you can put in. You click on this marker right here, you have the option of loading up different waveforms that come stock. All the old Pad Shop sounds, voices, waveforms, detune saws, so forth, stuff from different synthesizers, that they've labeled, and then other sounds in general, as well as new sounds that are included within this update. Gives you a nice palette of stuff to work with, and of course you can even put in your own waveforms, which is a huge bonus. So like any good sampler, you're only limited to what you feed it, and then ultimately what it does and how you use all that to make your stuff. This has some good patches right out the gate. So starting out, you got some decent patches right out the gate. They give you a basic sine wave, but you can go here and that's Abysmal Zone. Let's see what else we got. Akmar Bells. Hear all that movement going on. We'll do a couple more. I did Abysmal Zone. Let's keep going. Do one more. So that's Airy Bell, and it's a lot of presets that come with this device. I really don't want to hit the load program just because I'm trying to save some time for myself on this. Now, some standout features with Pad Shop Pro 2. You get up to 128 voices of polyphony, which is really nice. So you can create some really, really nice sounds with this plugin. You can play a whole bunch of keys and kind of really get busy and not have to worry about notes dropping off. It's easy on the computer. Comparatively speaking, it won't use up a lot of, resources, which that's something to keep in mind when you are working with granular plugins. Another thing personally, right out the gate, I will say, out of all of the plugins that I'm comparing in this video, what I like about Padshop Pro is the fact that you can get those texture, ambient, outer space sounds with this device, but then you can also, just have your standard type of sounds, that's in here, and you can kind of get, some of that classic analog sound if that's what you're looking for. And you can do that by going to this marker right here, main tuning, pulling that backer. But not just by doing that as well. You also, it just has a lot of different waveforms that you can program and just kind of get your standard, synthesis sounds, which, some people like. On the other hand, you got other folks that are like, hey, well, we got other plugins for that. Why do I need to do that in a Padshop Pro when I can do that, in my other plugins? And I just think it's a nice feature to have, and you can have a plugin that can be versatile sonically as well as in its capabilities. Now, if this is your first time using Padshop Pro, we'll go over some of the basics. You have your different markers to change the position of the sounds you're working with. So you have your random marker, you can change the position of where your waveform starts playing, your offset, your spread, and then going down here, you have speed, how fast it's going, the number, different grains playing. You have your duration, again, more spread. You can change the pitch. You can change the shape underneath. It's going to affect the tone. I don't know if you can hear that, but I can hear the difference as I change the shape of that knob as I'm playing through my headphones. You got all the different filters over here. You have a nice selection of filters, not overwhelming, but you got, you can get, different sound palettes and get very versatile because of the different filters that they allow you to pick. Over here, you got your distortion, and you can pick all that stuff. Resonance, filter envelope, standard amplitude envelope right here. 4 envelopes to work with. And then on your LFO, you have a third envelope here that you can use to adjust the sound. You have your modulation matrix and 4 different, slots to work with for each page. You have a step sequencer, which is very flexible. Again, you got 2 oscillators to work with, so oscillator A, oscillator B. Standout feature is the ability with this plugin to switch from your standard grain oscillator to your spectral oscillator. What the spectral oscillator does in a nutshell is it allows for a complex or a higher level of time stretching and pitch shifting. And so, certain samples and certain waveforms, you can play that one sample and go all the way up and all the way down that scale on your keyboard and maintain the tonal characteristics for your sounds. This is really good for one shots, and it's also good for single cycle waveforms, which are like AKA basically like really short wavetables. So you could put those sounds into something like this, and you can really get, really be free to begin customizing and creating your own sounds. And with 2 oscillators, you can be really creative in terms of how you layer those patches and those sounds together. Now, on the second page, you have, all of your other stuff like your arpeggiator. You can turn that on, how many steps you want. Pick your phrases. You can make them yourself and save it here. You can change the tempo. You can modify the performance. Go into the effects page. You have your EQ, make your patches fit well in the mix. You have your modulation effects, which give you flanger, chorus, ensemble, phaser. You have your delay, and then you have your reverb. So you can set that stuff up. And, you know, again, if you're using something like Reason, or I imagine a couple of other plugins can do this too, you set this up in a combinator or their version of a combinator and load up more than one VST within an instance of that product, and you can have a really thick sound. So yeah, Padshop Pro 2, very flexible. Sounds good for what it is. I don't want to stay on this too long because I got to do a couple more plugins, and I really want to kind of see if I can cut this video in a reasonable time. But anyhow, this is a good sounding plugin. It's very flexible. I would recommend you demo it. You can do a lot with this plugin, and it is very versatile in terms of its sonic output. So it is something that I would recommend you check out, demo, and experiment with. All right, next plugin, part 2. Let's go to Grain from Reason. I've done quite a few videos using Grain. I've got some videos where I do some comparisons between Grain and Bitwig Sampler, so you can check that out. I know it's got a lot of noise in the background, but hey, it is what it is. Check that video out. But just to give a short rundown, with Grain, it's a stock instrument in Reason. And what I like about Grain is it's easy on the resources for your computer. It's not super duper heavy. It's not light, but compared to a lot of other granular plugins, historically speaking, this won't crush your computer right out the gate. You have one oscillator, so to speak, to work with as your sound engine, but you can easily mitigate that by using the combinator and Reason. So if you want more than one oscillator, you can load up as many as your heart's desires or as many as your computer can handle. Outside of that, let me go back here so we can hear that. And one thing about Grain, like Grain just sounds amazing just for what it is and what you can do with it. I mean, there's a lot you can do with this plugin in terms of its tonal quality. It just sounds good. And so if this is what you're working with and you don't want to go anywhere else in terms of like investing in other plugins, you really don't need to. A lot of times when I upload something or open up Reason in terms of sampling, this is my primary go-to for samples. And it's because you have 4 different engines that you can work with. So you have your standard tape engine. This is going to give you standard playback of your sample with all the strengths and limitations thereof. Then next you have long grain, which is what we were on earlier. So what's like, this is one of the granular engines in this plugin. Tape mode is just, you know, fairly standard, but I gotta stop messing around with this because I'll be here all day. But this is one of your granular engines. This will kind of give you like your basics of granular synthesis. You can spread the you can pan the spread to the left or to the right, keep it in the middle. You can do pitch jitter. You can do it here as well as here. You also can set your grain length, the rate or the speed, rate, pacing, spacing, and then the crossfade, whether or not which is really cool. If you go here to grain oscillator, grain oscillator will really change the characteristics of the sound. In other videos where I've talked about the grain oscillator, in my opinion, it enables you to take a waveform or a sample and kind of convert it, well, not convert it, you can kind of make it behave like a wavetable, sonically speaking. Put that sample in there. And it's all going to depend on the sample that you put in as well. You can change the grain spacing, the grain length, and then lastly, you have your spectral grain. And in my opinion, I think this is really good for like playing with the harmonics of a waveform using this engine. And then you can adjust the snap, the filter, which kind of demonstrating on the fly. You have your form, the formats, the tuning, and so forth. Now, outside of that, you have the basics where you can adjust your pitch and so forth. You have your filters, which they just give you like a few of the basics. But I will say that the low pass and low pass ladder is really nice, especially for basses. I've shown this in a video before, but I'll show it again. Put your 808s, set it to tape, run the filter, open it up, and you don't, even if you leave the level alone, you'll hear a clear difference in the sound of your 808 before it's in the filter and after it's in the filter. And I got a shorts video demonstrating that. So check that out and experiment with it. Outside of that, you got your amplitude envelope as normal, but where things get really interesting is the envelope section, because you got several different envelopes you can work with, and then you can pick presets. You have about 20 presets that you can choose from. You can make the adjustments. You can also go here and you can begin to change your filter, or not your filter, your envelope suite as you desire. And you can also use this for, adjusting your filter envelopes as well. So you can get some really interesting sounds out of this device just by messing around with the envelopes. And then you can go, make all the adjustments with the sync. Then you got your LFOs. Then you got your mod matrix at the bottom. And then you have your effects, which, for what it is, they give you a nice amount of effects, nothing over the top. Because again, if you don't like these and you're using Reason, you just use the stock effects that come with the plugin or the product. But, you don't necessarily have to reach for those either, because you have these. So, I mean, it's, in that respect, it's pretty cool. One thing about Reason and grain, it's immensely flexible, very powerful, sounds good. Again, it's extremely versatile. So it's one of those plugins or one of those devices where it's like, in my experience, a lot of times, like, I don't necessarily need to open up other plugins, because grain really does what I need it to do. On the flip side, you get about 12 voices, so you can't go crazy with it in terms of like laying down chords or like trying to play like some classical music where you really are, trying to play all those notes, so to speak. This is really good for pads, and it's really light on the computer. Like, I don't have any issues with this eating up my resources like some of the other plugins I'm about to mention. So if grain is all you got a lot, and don't stress it. Moving on, talking about Arturia Pigments. Now, Pigments is a powerhouse, and in a lot of ways, as I'm waiting on this thing to load up, Pigments really is a one-stop shop for VSTs and plugins in general. And as such, by being a one-stop shop plugin, in my opinion, it's one of those things where if this is all you had as an extra VST to get to work, I would say this is pretty much all you would need, because it covers all of your basis of sound generation, from analog, wavetable, sample, and harmonic. It even does some FM in the analog space, and I think the wavetable space too. It's been a while, so just watch some videos. I think I got a couple from last year and the year prior where I talk about Pigments. It's a really good plugin, and what you can do in terms of sound design is very, very thorough. And yeah, it's just a lot here. But as a granular plugin, it's pretty powerful just with this engine alone, and I'll explain why. You have your standard sampler. You can add a sample. Let's go here. And you can add up to 6 samples here. And that doesn't even include your second engine. So keep that in mind. You can have 2 engines going, and then for your engine type, you can add another sampler, granular engine, if that's what you choose to do. Now, you can change your start position, make some adjustments. So again, this is cool just because you can upload 6 samples. But once you turn on this granular engine, change the density, all the basic stuff and more that a granular synth will give you. You can change the start, the pitch, the density. The cool thing I like about this plugin in particular is you can not only change the direction, back to forward playing, but you can adjust how much of the backwards and forwardness, that sounds terrible, that you want, as you're playing with this plugin, which is really cool. Again, the size, you can modify the width and then the volume. And then you can take all of those features and then run it through all of this stuff, your envelopes, your LFOs, your functions, your combinates, and set this thing up however you like. And then you have a nice filter selection that you can work with, all these different filter types. So, I mean, there's a lot here. That's just in the multi-mode. Then when you combine that with the effects, and all the different types of effects, and then the sequencer, I mean, there's a lot that you can do generating sounds with Pigments. So, and the one thing about Pigments that I like is that Pigments will come on sale and you can get it for about $100 when Arturia does their special promotions. So, 200 might be out of the price point right now, but you can save up a couple of ducats, get it on the Black Friday or Christmas / going into New Year's special deal, and then you can get it for $100, and you'll be getting a really, really powerful VST. And the granular engine alone is remarkable. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because I've done 2 videos with Pigments, but the one thing I'll say about Pigments as a whole, the sound palette is extremely versatile in terms of what you can do. It sounds great. The granular engine alone is remarkable. And when you combine that with the fact that you got several other engines to work with. You know, what you can make with Pigments and what you can do with it is pretty much limitless. And the presets that are there, in my opinion, they got something for everybody, regardless of what genre of music you make. There's something in there for everybody. So, you know, keep that in mind. On the flip side, Pigments is very resource intensive. Like, it's going to use a lot of your resources. So keep that in mind with Pigments. You need a supercomputer to run it. So that is the only downside with Pigments. It's resource heavy. It's going to use a lot of your computer. Even if you got a strong, powerful computer, it's going to use a lot of those resources. But it's understandable because they just keep adding all these cool engines and whatnot in different ways to make sounds. So shout out to Arturia for, you know, doing that, and for thus far providing free updates. So yeah, that's my bias towards Arturia Pigments, as you can hear. But it's a good plugin. Lastly, I want to talk about Form. Form is from Native Instruments. It came out, I think, somewhere between 2016, 2017, if I'm not mistaken. And it's one of their granular ensembles. Now, Reactor is a product from Native Instruments that allows you to kind of like make your own sounds. I'm pausing. You can make your own plugin with Reactor basically, and create your own ensembles and whatnot, and program that stuff in here. It is really cool. It is a lot of stuff that you can do with Reactor. And it has a lot of different ensembles built in, as you can see here. So Reactor is one of those plugins that's just, in my opinion, all over the place and could be overwhelming. Form is just one of those ensembles that's part of Reactor. Reactor is another plugin that is also known for, you know, granular synthesis, at least early on. And I'm dating myself. I'm thinking like 2005. Like, people knew about Reactor as being one of those plugins that could do granular. With Form, you know, you got one sample that you can work with, or one oscillator that you can work with. You can use the sounds that come in it, or you can use your own, you know, waveforms and put it in and get to work. You know, you can do all the standard stuff that's standard with granular synth. One of the standout features that I like is the performance section. So as you can see here where I'm clicking, I got my mouse down here, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different variations of this patch that's already loaded, and you can go here and create more. You can make adjustments, you can tweak certain things, and so, you know, that's just a nice little feature to have. So that's the performance part. You got 5 or multiple variations of the same sound, and you can save all that stuff in one patch. Here you have your main, you know, window. You can set the length, what you want to play back. You got this part right here. It's kind of like an envelope going through that sound. I'll show you the curve presets right here, and there are lots of them. You got 3 windows of what looks to be 25 different, you know, waves that you can use as presets, or you can go here and edit it and change it as you see fit. You can adjust the sample length over here, adjust the speed, set the BPM, etc., or customize certain stuff yourself. So it's a lot. Then over here you got, this other window, your sound window, where you can go and just make more adjustments to the pitch, your formats. Here you have a sub oscillator. I do think that, in my opinion, when Reason made grain, they borrowed a lot of concepts from form, especially when it comes to this additive oscillator. Now the difference is that you get your sine wave, kind of mesh it to make it a almost sawtooth, and go right into your pulse wave. Then you can turn in your oscillator effects. Now this is where things get interesting. Your oscillator effects here can really begin to shape your sound and make all sorts of sonic changes to it in ways that you wouldn't necessarily hear in other granular devices. That's the shaper, that's the deform. You got your stereo output, multiplier. And then over here you got your FM engine. We can set all that stuff up so it can be modulated without you having to click on it with a mouse and do all of that. Your filter is pretty modest. You get your standard high pass and low pass and notch, you cut off. But the reality is, with the oscillator effects section and being able to add these other qualities to it, with the FM, the shaper, and the deforming, you really don't need to do a whole lot of adjustments, in my opinion. Then you have the effects section here where you can change the frequency shaping, turn it off, turn it on. You get, all of these different parameters. The band filter, looks like you got 2 of them, reverb, delay, dynamics, and so forth. I'll play a couple patches just so you can hear it. You got your keys. Let's go here to belly multi. Interesting. Ancient digital epiphany swirl. Let's go back into leads. Let's do a descent. Descent is decent. Fathom. Standard sawtooth wave. Interesting. I don't know how I feel about that. Sounds like a modified analog brass. That's cool. Let's do one more. Liquid air. Leave that alone. I do like that patch. And we'll do one more for the pads, because why not? Let me slow it down. Dry cell. I don't like that one. not bad, not bad. One thing about Form and Native Instruments, at least this particular plugin, even though it's granular and you can program stuff however you wish, the presets here lean more towards the EDM space. And so, not that you can't do your urban music with it, but a lot of your initial presets are going to be more geared towards like again, the EDM, the house, techno, that space. And there's nothing wrong with that, but just be aware of that, getting this plugin, that if you're looking at it as a preset, starter, I would not necessarily go after it looking for your trap sounds or your urban sounds. That being said, you can program the synth to do whatever you want it to do. And even though you get one oscillator, one sample oscillator, and then one, simple, they call it additive, but it's just basically an additional basic oscillator. You can do a lot with it due to the fact that you can do the FM and shape your sounds here, then go add your reverbs and all that stuff here, effects change as you desire. So I'm gonna wrap this up, comparing the 4 different plugins. They all sound good. I don't have anything negative to say about any of them. They all, implement granular synthesis in their own way. I would say Padshop is probably the VST that's most computer friendly, and I like the time stretch algorithm. So if I didn't have grain, this would be the one I would go to, and that would be it. On the other hand, because I do use grain, I think grain is great for what it is, and because it's so powerful and it's so versatile, I very rarely have to reach for the other two or any of them. They are more like extra special tools. They are not the main dish, because grain does a lot of stuff very well. Pigments is cool because Pigments is a one-stop shop and you can pretty much do almost anything with it. But it is very CPU resource heavy, and you need a reasonably powerful computer, to run it, or just understand that, as you're trying to load up multiple instances of Pigments, it is going to eat your resources very quickly. I know I'm using Reason in particular. That may be a little bit different if I was using Ableton, or Bitwig, or Cakewalk, but even still, something to consider when working with Pigments. Even when I don't have those other applications running, Pigments is a powerhouse and requires a lot of resources. And then lastly, Reactor and Forms Reactor from Native Instruments. Really good, really powerful, sounds good. I would say out of the gate, in my opinion, it is the least versatile with its sonic, output in terms of the initial presets. Don't mean that you can't get there if you're someone who's trying to make urban music, your trap sounds, your hip hop sounds, traditionally speaking. Again, it all depends on what you feed it and your own samples that you come in with. But if you're just looking at it from a standpoint of using presets, you're going to have to do a little bit more work with Form. That being said, once you get over that hump and learn how to use it, there's a lot you can do with it. And yeah, I would recommend at least trying it out. I'm not sure on the B-sides if you need a Reactor, like the full version of Reactor, to run it, or if you can just run it, using like the free version of Reactor. And so that's something else you have to read up on as well, because I have not read that part. I got Form when I got the whole complete setup years and years ago. So, and that's not a flex, that's just when I got that package, this came with it. So I don't know if, you could just demo it if you had like Reactor, the light edition. So you had to look that up. But these are all good tools to have, and I would definitely recommend them. Now, some of you might be saying, how come you didn't do Mimic and include that? Me personally, I like Mimic. I think it's dope. I don't look at Mimic, and this is just my opinion, I don't look at Mimic as a granular synth. It is a sampler that can do multiple things, like, take samples and chop them up and do your basic playback. And it has a good time stretch engine in it, so it's good for one shots, but it's not my go-to for granular synthesis, even though it has a granular engine. In my opinion, is not as powerful as grain, or even as powerful as scenic. So that's why I avoided using that. And scenic the same way. If you have Reason and you bought scenic, that's another plugin that's equally powerful or also powerful. But in my opinion, compared to these, scenic's not bad. I use it. It's not one of my go-tos. It is capable, but I think if you got grain, in my opinion, between grain and scenic, I would pick grain. So that's why I didn't put those and bother to do that in the plugin. Anyway, I'm past due for time. Thank you for watching this video. I'm Tim Keys. Peace out.